Hello. Hello, reporter room investigators. I am logging on to make a correction that I got from one of my um, awesome comments. I do read your comments. If you don't see something to a response to a comment, it means it got caught in a filter. So everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. Opinions are not facts. Please don't send any negativity to anyone. Let's be kind to each other. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up because I know you were here. So I have put out in one of my videos, I think it was not the last video, but the video before, that Bryan Kohberger did not have any friends. And J_T, JAY_T 2023 was kind enough to send me some links. I can only use this one because I know that NewsNation, as long as you provide commentary, they generally do not strike. So I will use this one, but I was actually sent, hi there, welcome. I was actually sent a couple of different links. So can you guys hear me okay? Let me know in the comment section if you can hear me. So I am always willing to correct myself when I'm wrong. I was wrong about this. BK did have friends. Listen to this. Let me play this for you. So this is NewsNation. And this is a former friend of Bryan Kohberger in complete shock.
Of 4 Idaho college students, correspondent Evan Lambert has been looking into the background of the suspect, this man, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger. Evan joins us live from Washington, D.C. with these new details. So, Evan, what all have you been able to uncover?
Well, Nicole, we're starting to get a better picture of Bryan Kohberger through online and other records, but also from someone who says that he knew Kohberger, our affiliate in Pennsylvania, speaking with a man who says that some years ago he ran with Kohberger on a regular basis. Listen to his reaction to the news that Kohberger was arrested and charged for these murders in Moscow, Idaho.
So this guy actually, I have to provide commentary to have it fall under fair use. So this guy actually ran with Bryan Kohberger. He was a friend of Kohberger's who went running. So BK did have friends. He sent this, JT sent me a couple of other links as well. But this is the only one that I can use on this channel that I know doesn't copyright strike. The other 3, I'm not so sure. One was from Fox News though. So anyway, and another one was a content creator who I don't know well enough to know if I can share his content without his permission. But this one I can share. But there were 4 links that were sent to me, and they are in the comment section. JAY_TEE 2023 is one that laid the comments. Who was in the police body cam seen running from the house? My understanding, it was 3 students, and that they were cleared. But Tony, I don't know. I don't know everything. If you're just joining me, this is Reporter Room, and this is a Critical Thinkers channel. Let's listen in. And then I have 3 other things. You guys know I usually come prepared for my live streams. I have 3 other important packages to share with you. And one is from Brian Entin, something that he recently did. And then I have 2 articles to share. So we have a lot of stuff to get into. Let's listen in to this.
Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Our coverage continues now. Suspect, this man, 28-year-old Bryan. So, Evan, what all have you been able to uncover?
Well, Nicole, we're starting to get a better picture of Bryan Kohberger through online and other records, but also from someone who says that he knew Kohberger, our affiliate in Pennsylvania, speaking with a man who says that some years ago he ran with Kohberger on a regular basis. Listen to his reaction to the news that Kohberger was arrested and charged for these murders in Moscow, Idaho.
I used to go on night runs with him because, like, I didn't want to go running at night by myself. So I would text him like, hey, you want to go for a run? We go for 6-7 mile runs at night. So, like, when I saw who it was, I was just in like complete shock. I'm still kind of like shaking knowing about that. Like, it's just unreal to think somebody could actually do that to somebody. Like, it's
Okay, so I do have to provide commentary under fair use. So this guy was somebody that knew Bryan Kohberger, and he used to go running with him. Let's listen in.
absolutely like mind-boggling. Like, my adrenaline's still kind of running after finding the information out. So just I feel for the families, and I'm just happy justice can be served now. So.
And we have also learned.
Okay, so that was one friend of Bryan Kohberger, and there were four links total, and this is the one I can provide to you because under fair use, there's only certain outlets that will let you use their stuff. And it sounds like my neighbor is getting ready to mow their lawn, but that's okay. Let me grab this next one. So this is Brian Entin, and he is going to talk about, let's make sure I'm sharing this. Let me grab it. Thanks for your patience while I do this. I have, this is my first time. I'm not a big streamer. You guys know that. This is my first time like trying to share my screen with actual videos from YouTube. So this is pretty cool. Okay. So this is Brian Entin, and let's listen in. Also from NewsNation.
Had a habit of going for drives alone. Often he would go for drives at night. He did so late on November 12th and into November 13th, 2022. Mr. Kohberger is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. At this time, there is not a specific witness to say precisely where Mr. Kohberger was at each moment of the hours between late November 12th, 2022 and early morning November 13th, 2022. He was out driving during the late night and early morning hours of November 12th to November 13th.
So Brian's alibi was that he was out driving in through the late night. There's not a specific witness that we know about to say precisely when Brian was at where he was between the late night hours of November 12th, 2023 and the wee hours of November 13th, 2022. But he was out driving during the late night and early morning hours. This is his alibi. And I'm curious what you guys think about this alibi. If you think this is a good alibi, put a 1 in the chat. If you think that placing himself in the car is not a great alibi, put a 2 in the chat. I want to see what you guys think about this. Let's play the next part.
2022. So he was out for a long drive. These 4 pages, they don't give any evidence to back that up, but there was one line that stood out to me. It says, Mr. Kohberger has indicated he anticipates corroborating witnesses. So maybe there are witnesses. They may have witnesses waiting. Maybe there aren't witnesses. We don't know that part yet. They didn't fill us in there, but apparently they are claiming the alibi is he was out driving during that time. Joining me now with.
So the alibi that he provided, and this is where I feel like I got a little bit, I don't know, frustrated, was, we waited a long time for this alibi, right? They were supposed to turn this over within 10 days. Once the prosecution turned over all of the discovery, the defense team was supposed to provide an alibi within 10 days of that. That's an Idaho law. And so they got an extension. Ann Taylor filed for and got an extension for the alibi, and she got weeks and weeks. So she was given over between 4 and 5 weeks extra time. And it was supposed to be due on the 24th, and they still didn't provide an alibi at that time. And she was trying to say they were going to provide it at the trial. And the prosecution had to come back and say, no, we need the alibi, because what the prosecution doesn't want to do is bring a case all the way to trial and then have a defendant stand up after you've seated a jury and spent money impaneling a jury, have the defendant stand up and say, well, I can prove I was here, and here's video to show me at the Walmart shopping. It's an all-night Walmart. I was there all night, something like that. So that's why this rule is in place. This is why the alibi has to be turned over. So then this was the alibi that they gave Grunstruck says, I run late at night. So Sonia put up a 2. B. Rando, hey, so afraid of a mistrial or technical loophole. Need 1,000% ironclad case. How this man gets top-notch attorneys that we are paying for. Yeah, he's getting good attorneys. He is getting really good lawyers. He's stringing everyone along. So sad for the relatives of the victims. Angela says they knew he couldn't stay at home because too many cameras caught him out and about. And B. Randa says, this is all a game to Brian. Who's the smartest? Outwit prosecutor. Disgusting games being played. All right, well, let's listen in to the rest of this. And this is NewsNation Brian Entin on Bryan Kohberger's alibi.
Their insights on all of this, criminal trial attorney and NewsNation legal analyst Sarah Azari. She also has a weekly podcast called The Presumption. And Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County and a former assistant attorney general. We've got a great panel tonight, Sarah and Dave. I want to start with you, Sarah. I mean, out driving. They say that he was out driving around. I mean, what do you make of it? I guess I was just expecting something more than that.
And you can hear how incredulous Brian Entin sounds about this. The prosecution is the one that has to give the discovery evidence, and they did do that. They did do that. What the dispute is, let me just share that because crime on a dime. What the dispute was that the defense wanted, there's 2 different DNA samples that were taken. I'm going to try to explain this so it's pretty easy to follow. And then we're going to finish the rest of this. And I have 2 other packages to share with you. You guys know when I do live streams, I'm pretty organized. So there was 2 different DNA samples collected. Okay. The one was a familial DNA sample. That's where they used an ancestry DNA type of thing, heritage, one of those. And they collected it out of the trash. And now Bryan Kohberger was not in the system. He wasn't in CODIS. He had been arrested before, but they had not gotten his DNA sample. He was arrested for stealing his sister's cell phone when he was 19 years old. So he had been arrested, but his DNA was not in any of the databases. So the other DNA sample was a cheek swab. Now, the law enforcement had to get a court order because apparently Bryan Kohberger did not want to cooperate and give the cheek swab. And I find this to be, kind of sketchy a little bit, considering that, if you really wanted to exonerate yourself, I would give my DNA because I know it would clear me. But he didn't want to. And, that's his legal right. But prosecution went and got a court order and got a cheek swab. And that's the DNA sample that matched him to not millions, not billions, but in the octillion range. So basically it rules out everybody else pretty much on the planet except for Bryan Kohberger. Well, the reason what the defense is claiming is they want to be focused on the DNA that was collected out of the trash can that matched it to Brian's father. And in my opinion, it's because this would be easier to argue. It was collected out of the garbage. So they would have an easier time of trying to discredit the way that DNA was collected than the cheek swab DNA. The prosecution agrees. And so they also feel like that's not the best DNA sample. So they're not using it. They're only using the cheek swab DNA as the match. That's the one that was collected with a court order. And that's the one that had a really good chain of custody, and it matched directly. Again, not million, not billion, octillion's 8. So in the octillion range, it matched to Bryan Kohberger. So this is what the defense is doing. They're still having with their motions, and I feel like it's kind of a distraction technique. They're filing motions that the prosecution hasn't turned over everything because they want to be focused on this genealogy DNA that was matched to his dad that was pulled out of the trash. And what the prosecution is saying is, no, we're not even using that in court we're not even using that in court. We are going to be using the cheek swab DNA. So everything that the defense, so everything that's being used in the trial has been turned over to the defense team, and they did finally provide the alibi as they were required to. So that's been settled. I just wanted to catch you guys up. Jake 5, hey. All right, that's fine, Jakey. Don't worry about it. I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much. And thank you for the super thanks the other day. And Catherine also says it's ridiculous. It took him so long to say it. He is playing games, waiting to see what they had on him before he opened his mouth. Well, let's listen, because I think Brian Entin seems a little bit incredulous. Let's see what the experts say.
Well, I'm sorry you're disappointed, Brian, but look, Ann Taylor's all business. She's no games here. And I think we're used to seeing an alibi in the traditional sense where it is, I was here at this time and these are the people that can corroborate it. That's not what she's doing. What stood out to me is that there is this new information, and we know that she's saying he was alone. Translation: there is nobody that corroborates, where he was, what he was doing at this time, and that she was driving around. That's key, because should those cell pings, the movement of the car, the data from the phone, in fact check out and be reliable forensic evidence, then he doesn't have to deny that it was him driving that Elantra. He could just say, that still is insufficient to place me in this party house and put a knife in my hand.
So what do you guys think about that? Do you feel like the fact that because what I think happened is I think that this is just my opinion. So speculation, trigger warning here. My speculation is that when Ann Taylor, and she is a really good lawyer, the whole defense team is outstanding. But when she went through the case, when she went through all of the data, remember they had so much information. That's why she said she had so much information to go through. That's why she needed to pause to do the alibi. So Ann Taylor's came forward with he was out driving around. I don't know. I feel like this alibi is kind of shaky. I feel like she had to put this out there because she felt like, and this is just my opinion, I would love to get your opinion. Please drop me a comment in the top chat or in the section below. But I think she felt like she had to put him in the car. She couldn't put him with somebody else. So she put him in the car driving around. So anyway, I do think that's what she had to do, because I think that they have him on camera, or they have that car with its license plate or something that identifies that car on camera. So it was indisputable that he was in the car in the area at this time. So she had to put him out driving around. My question is, and this was in the comment section below, and somebody raised this, and I thought it was so great. They said that they wanted to know if when he, after this was done, did he continue to have insomnia and drive around at night? And also, after he went back to Pennsylvania, did he continue? Remember, he was under surveillance at that point. Law enforcement pulled him over twice on the way from Moscow to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, or sorry, Pullman, Washington to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. So did he keep driving around at night with insomnia, or did this stop? All opinions are welcome. Just please be respectful. I like having different opinions. It's the way we all learn. Let's listen in now. So we've heard the the woman who's here. She's going to take up the defense side. Now we're going to hear the other side of the argument. This will be somebody who's a commentator who's coming forward to speak about the prosecution side.
So I think those two terms were really significant in terms of the new information. And again, I think, alibi under Idaho code doesn't necessarily have to be, I was there, I was with this person at this time. Because remember, in this case, the timestamps go far beyond the 15-minute window around the murder. So for him to be able to get a gazillion terabytes of information and go through all of this with the delay, and then be able to say where he was exactly at a specific time is impossible at this. And they're pressing Ann Taylor, saying, "Where's the alibi? Where's the alibi? Where's this?" She's like, "Here's fine. This is what he was doing. He was
Well, to be fair, the reason the prosecution's pressing Ann Taylor is because she didn't give the alibi in time. She got weeks and weeks of an extension, and the prosecution needs to know if there's going to be an alibi provided. DNA was not under a victim. PCA says the sheath was beside on the right of Maddie. No, I just want to correct that. It says it was beside / underneath Maddie. So I think it was to the side and partially underneath her. And Jennifer says if the defense had phone records of him driving around on a regular basis, then that gives plausibility to his alibi. I wonder if it's more than phone records. I'm wondering if there's CCTV footage, because remember the law enforcement went out and they collected everything they could find on this. Rick says, in my opinion, the alibi was able to address just enough to what is legally needed without adding any more details than they needed to me. To me, if I had a solid alibi, I would be very specific with my details. So let's continue on with this interview.
Driving, and that's as much as we can tell you at this point.
Okay, so he was driving around, they say. We know there were cell phone pings, which I guess could go along with this driving around alibi. But Dave, my question is, remember, they said that his phone was turned off during the time of the murders. So if they're going to say he was driving around, how do they then explain why the phone was mysteriously turned off just at the time when the murders happened?
Guys know I have to do commentary for fair use. So yeah, I think that's the question we all have. Okay, so you're out driving around and your phone is pinging. I do think it's going to be more than phone pings, though. I think that maybe the defense could create enough doubt if it was just phone pings. I do think, and again, this is a speculation warning. I do think that with all the CCTV, we've only seen one. We've seen one CCTV video, but law enforcement picked up every camera they could get. They grabbed all of them on the routes in and around the house and on the route from Moscow to Pullman. So do they have this car on camera going to, at, or leaving from the crime scene? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Yeah, that's right. You're right, Rick. That's exactly what it did say. Idaho law says 10 days for an alibi. Yeah, exactly. He was given, he should have turned it over at the end of May, and he was given until July 24th. So he was given all of June and all of July. And then he still didn't come up with one. And that's why they were, the prosecution at this point is like demanding, hey, if you're going to do an alibi, we need to have it. So I think that's fine. Okay, let's, Cindy says, is he competent to stand trial? Mentally, he was driving. They can't railroad him into prison. Oh, I think he's competent. Sure. I haven't seen anything that says he was not competent. All opinions are welcome. Just share them respectfully. All right, let's hear the other side of the argument, though, because you can see Brian Entin is having a similar skepticism that a lot of people are having about this alibi. It took them, all of June and all of July, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah, such a criminology expert this defendant is, huh? He turns off his phone during the murders and expects to get away with it because of it. How will they find me? My phone was turned off. Well, the stuff in Ann Taylor's document, her pleading, is not inconsistent with what happened. This is what she said, as you quoted, that he would go on drives at night, and he did so late on November 12th and into November 13th. Well, that is still consistent with slaughtering those innocent victims. He could have been driving late on November 12th, stopped at the house in the wee hours, and then drove back. So it's not inconsistent. But the whole purpose of this alibi requirement under Idaho law is to avoid trial by ambush. You want to give prosecutors a chance to track down the witnesses so that Kohberger doesn't show up the day of trial and says, here it is, here's Uncle Stewie, I was at his house with him.
Right. It's a way for prosecutors. They don't want to find out at the trial that there's an alibi that would have exonerated him. And meanwhile, they've spent the money to go to court, seat a whole jury, And so prosecutors do need to know what it is. And law enforcement need to have the opportunity to check out the alibi, either to prove it or disprove it. So, you know, the fact that she put him in the car driving around, what does that say to you? Do you think that that's a little bit sketchy that he's in the car and his phone just switches off right at the time that these Maddie, Kaylee, Santa, and Ethan were done away with? Or do you find that it's okay? For Amber says she thinks it's circumstantial. Born to be Wild says, see, this is wrong. He is innocent until proven guilty. Most are already saying he did this. This is not how the law works. Leslie says, the sad part is list to say if it is the truth, if you just simply like to go for night drives because it clears your mind. And Riva says his phone not pinging in Moscow on the night, consistent with being switched off or on airplane mode. How did they not know if his phone was on or off? Well, they may have known. The defense may have known. And Midwest Mima says defense is attempting to cover his. And Jody Jackson says, I live in a small town. I've never driven past an apartment complex 12 times and just hung out in the general area where I don't know anyone. All right, well, let's continue on because I have this package to share and I have two more to share on top of this. We have so much information to get through. Let's continue on together, shall we? Let's continue on.
That's not fair. And they didn't give any witnesses because there are no witnesses. He's just going to say he was by himself that night. How convenient.
Sarah, I remember you told me early on, I remember you said this. You said this on the show, that you thought the biggest issue for the defense was that the phone was turned off. You found that that was a problem. It still doesn't seem like they can explain that. They can say he was driving around, but you know, how do you look past the fact that the phone was turned off?
So what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the fact that he's driving around and his phone switches off right when the crimes occurred? And LJD3 says, I'm wondering if they can show other crimes occurred while he turned off his phone. I think he may have rearranged things in the girl's place before. And oh, you're talking. Okay, so for those of you that don't know this story, there was a young woman that came forward and she said that she had somebody break into her apartment and she was told Bryan Kohberger about this. This is her story, not mine, but she said that he installed video cameras for security purposes. And then, there's, of course, the prosecution hasn't put on their case yet, so I don't have anything to corroborate this. So, but then it's being reported that he used those cameras to spy on her. So let's see. CJK says, I'm looking forward to the trial because I think law enforcement and others have done a great job so far. I want to see all the information they have. I want to see them too. Thank you, Jody. Thank you. Slooky Cat says, going for a drive, doing laps around the house at the exact time the mixers happened. Green-Eyed Bandit says there are two plainclothes officers that were in the area on a light-colored sedan. They turned off their body cams at 12:54 a.m. and turned back on 18 minutes later. Just saying. JJ Andrew says, Leslie, everyone is entitled to their opinion, whether right or wrong. Yes, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but people still voice their views, right or wrong. Yeah, I agree. But all opinions are welcome. Just be respectful to each other. That's all I ask. Thank you so much for that. And JJ, I appreciate it. And then Jody Jackson says, I think it was switched off so that the location can't be pinged. And I think that's what I've been seeing a lot in the comment section. CZ Malloy comes through with a 2. All right. Let's continue on, guys, because we have 2 more packages after this one. Let's continue on together.
I thought you were going to cross-examine me. Yeah, I still stand by what I said. I think that's always the bad fact. When a phone is on consistently and then is suddenly off, that to me is far worse than some of the stuff we hear about the touch DNA, for example, at the scene. I think we need to know a lot more about the cell data. Again, to be able to put this into context. I think prosecutors always, Dave maybe the exception, but prosecutors always come with hand-picked, cherry-picked pieces of evidence and information, and we then come in with a bigger context. And so without really seeing what the cell data is like, I can't really say how bad it.
And she's right. I mean, we haven't seen the prosecution case yet at all. We need to definitely see the prosecution's case before we decide. And I think being on the fence is okay. If you're not sure, I think that's okay. I feel like I'm just following where the evidence that I have so far is leading me, and trying to use journalistic resources for everything. But I can, I can see that there's still some big gaps that we just don't have answers to yet. So, hello, Six Sense Amelia. I want to thank our mods, channel members, and our subscribers. I really appreciate you guys. If you want to join the top chat, you just need to be subscribed for 1 minute, and you can join the top chat and share your comments. All comments are welcome as long as they're respectful. I believe that too, says Zonia. John says, why no trail in the house if he did it? Well, we don't know. We don't know anything about that part of it yet, because we don't have anything except what was in the affidavit. So we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. We don't have all the information yet. So we need to wait on that. What if his phone died and just had to recharge it? I am pretty sure that's what the defense is going to say, Terry. And for Amber says, Murray, that's why a part of me thinks this could have been a social experiment for Bryan. Oh, wow. And then Opinion Einstein says that community has a history of PCA issues because of the terrain in the area and location of the towers. Towers. I think that's something BK knew about. Very interesting. Jennifer says, what about the red car in the trailer park close by that was seen bleaching the inside of their car the morning they were discovered, and that person left and never returned? So suspicious. And Mike says, flood, there's nothing to suggest there wasn't a trail. Wait for the trial. They said it was a mess. Yeah, I heard the same thing, Mike. I heard that the scene was so bad that a lot of the police officers had PTSD afterward, that it was that bad. So we don't know anything about the crime scene. We don't even know the order that this occurred in yet. What order the victims were done away with. We don't have any of that information yet. JG says there's a lot to come out when the trial starts. Yes, I agree. For Amber says it could explain the perfectly placed sheath, or he lost it. I mean, I don't know. Jody says, hello, Six Sense Amelia. Robin says, we don't know how often he turns off his phone. It could be a habit of his. If I were going to commit a crime, my phone would be at home. Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think that's something that the prosecution and the defense both need. Is this a habit of Bryan's? Did he always turn off his phone at that time? Does he always drive around? Did he drive around after these 4 young people were done away with? Born to be Wild says to John, yes, it's very suspicious to me. Like her, introduce a variable. And Mike says, John, it wasn't 8 hours. It was 9 a.m. to 11:57 a.m., 3 hours. They called 911 upon discovery. Yeah, let me explain that too, Mike. Yeah, so I've heard a lot of people saying that, oh, they waited to call. What the roommates never, I don't think the roommates ever were the ones that called. What happened was Ethan I don't know if he had plans with his friend. I'm sure we'll find out at the trial, or if his friend, just came over to see where he was. But his friend, it was Ethan's friend that found the crime scene. The roommates were, my understanding is they were still asleep. So it wasn't, they didn't call. I've heard people say that they called all their sorority friends. I've heard all the rumors, but my understanding from credible sources is that Ethan's friend stopped by. He stopped by, and he needed to see where Ethan was. They had plans to do something, or he was looking for his friend, and he came upon the crime scene. He got one of the phones from the roommates, and he is the one that called, and it was one of the roommates that passed out, or somebody who was with Ethan's friend that passed out. So let's continue on with this, and because I have 2 more packages after this one that I want to share.
It is that his phone was off,
Yeah, it makes sense.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television.
My understanding is that both of the roommates were still asleep and in their rooms. They were both in their rooms. They had, let me grab this really quick. Let's see. All right. So I thought this was really interesting also. This is an article that came out. Oh, I don't want to get. So they were wondering why we don't have as many SKs as we used to have. And America has been frightened and fascinated by SKs for decades. Dramas and documentaries about SKs are binge watching hits. And many of these guys live in infamy. And I think one of the reasons that we have so many people that are into these, let me see if I can turn off these ads. Why we have so many people that are into these stories is I think it's a trauma bonding thing. I shared this in my members only live stream the other day. I think there's a trauma bonding that happens. And so people who are really attracted to true crime, and even we've seen a lot of these women who write, and men too, who write to these SKs, right? We hear about the love letters. A lot of them get married afterward. So I was trying to find out, what is it that attracts people to these SKs? And it's kind of a trauma bonding. I think that, people get very involved in what was happening, what happened to them in their own childhood. And maybe they had, something horrific happen to them in their own childhood by someone that they spent a lot of time with. It could have been a parent, it could have been a friend of the family, something like that. And and it's a trauma bonding. So when they see the SK, it brings up familiarity. It brings up a familiarity to the whole thing. JJ Andrew says, barring conspiracy theories, you have to admit that circumstantial evidence is piling up. Yes, I agree. There's been a lot of circumstantial evidence. There's been the phone pings that we know about. The page 118, we still don't know what's on there. The fact that he was putting trash in other neighbors' trash, that's the 9-hour detour that he and his dad took from Pullman, Washington to Brightsville, Pennsylvania. I can see avoiding a snowstorm, but a big 9-hour detour, that's like an all-day drive. That's a long detour. So I think, things are starting to add up. The DoorDash has been ruled out. The 10 calls to Jack. For those of you that are with the channel, I investigated all of that. I dug into all of that. And I have, if you haven't gone through my playlist, you can see the videos on that. All right, so let's go through this. Why are we so fascinated by all of this? But also, how come we don't have as many? Why is this less frequently? Why is this happening less frequently? And researchers believe that there's just a handful. We know about the Long Island SK, right? The Rex Hewerman. And so I don't know, if you grew up in the 70s and 80s, it was really common to hitchhike. So I think people were more vulnerable. We were more likely to get into someone's car. So a lot of the reason that they're being stopped is from DNA collection, but also I think just, community awareness. People are being more careful. Even with this case, on one of the live streams, we talked about, how to keep yourself safe from somebody who is, because stalking is not, it escalates. We used to think a peeping Tom was harmless. We used to think peeping Toms were just harmless, but we found that it escalates. It escalates and they escalate. They become fixated. And we saw this in the Jodi Arias case, right? I mean, Jodi Arias went out with Travis Alexander, and for whatever reason, something in her brain clicked over, and she went from just being a girlfriend to being very obsessive, right? She was taking photos of him without his permission. She was entering his house without his permission, really violating his boundaries. She became very obsessed with him, very jealous. She slashed his tires. I mean, did a lot of really bizarre things. And then ultimately she became so fixated on him that when it came time to let him go, she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. And she ended up doing away with who she was obsessed with. And then she went to his funeral. They do have other properties. So she even went to his funeral. So I think it's easier for people to, let's go through the, let's go through that. All right. Oh, this is just hold on. I can't show that video because I don't know how they are with, so she was really, really obsessed with Travis Alexander. She was really, really into him. She had like a relentless obsession with him. See if I can get this to pull up without a video. Okay, here we go. Let me grab this. Let me share it with you guys. Okay, this is my first time sharing stuff. I'm trying to get better at streaming. You guys know I mostly do stuff. So she was found guilty in 2018, and this was her boyfriend. So she was really obsessive. So I think people are like a lot more aware of that stalkers can escalate. They're more likely to keep their blinds closed. And we all talked about, a lot of people believe,
all of the evidence to me is,
a lot of people believe that he had been at the house prior and that he was parking in that apartment parking lot that was located behind the 1122 King Road house. And it was up on the hill a little bit. So he would have been able to look right down into their bedrooms if they had their curtains open and into the house. It was almost like looking into a goldfish bowl for somebody like this. So Jodi Arias, not all sociopaths, not all narcissists are sociopaths. In fact, most aren't, but most sociopaths or psychopaths are narcissistic. So she went to prison for life because she did away with the object of her obsession. Also with a knife. She used the knife, I'm watching my words, 27 times. And then after that, she still got her gun that she had taken from her grandmother's house, shot him in the face. And I don't know why they didn't go after the capital punishment with her. It's kind of weird. I think that, that to me, it just seems like, let me take the ads away. You guys have to be subjected to the ads. But I think that it's like really creepy that she stalked him. She harassed him. She ultimately did away with him. And then after she did that, she decided that she was going to go to his funeral. She went to his funeral and she had sat with his family and friends and attended his funeral with them. So I think part of the reason that we don't have as many people that are doing stuff like this anymore is because people are more aware and more careful about stalking. And so they're more careful about, doing hitchhiking. They're more aware of some of the ploys that people use to get into their barriers. So I want to talk a little bit about confirmation bias. I talked about this a little bit can you guys see that? So confirmation bias is something that we're going to all have to work on, including myself, with this case, because I think we all kind of have our opinions of what we think happened, but we don't know for sure. He's innocent until proven guilty, but we just all need to be aware of confirmation bias is a type of bias. It affects the way that we look at stories and the news that we come across. So what we tend to do is if we already have a belief of what happened, we tend to favor information that reinforces this belief rather than challenges this belief. Now, this isn't conscious. This is something that, we do. It's a way that we do it's just natural, the way our brains are built. But I think, being on the fence is an okay place to be. If you're not sure, you want more evidence, I think that's okay. Some people feel like they already have a decision, and that's okay too. But it is something to be aware of, that it's an unconscious bias. It can be very subtle. And it's a theory that just refers to judgments and opinions we form about someone or something. This is from the BBC UK, without even being aware of it. So we get a fixed belief in our head of this is what happened. And then it's very, very difficult to change that opinion over. And journalists have our own perspectives. I have my own perspectives and viewing stories in different ways. I tend to really dig into everything I can find on stuff. But we can see this bias sometimes in the way that people report, and everybody has a little bit of confirmation bias. It's just a natural human state. So I think it's kind of good to understand this, so that if people that we're interacting with don't agree with us, they have a little bit of a different view on it. I think that's okay. I don't think we all have to have the same view. And it's okay that we can be a little bit different on it. All right. Let me grab this. I have one more. Let me see. Capital punishment. To me, it just says that the prosecution feels either A, very confident in their case. And if you agree with that, put an A up. Or B, the family members want it and the prosecution is honoring that. C is you think both. The prosecution has a strong case and the family members want it. But why are they going for this? Because they didn't do it in the Jodi Arias case back in 2008. And that was similar, except for that she did know him and it was one person, not four. Oh, and in that situation, Travis Alexander had roommates and he lay in his bathroom for days and his roommates didn't know. And they still didn't have anything to do with it. She did do it. Thank you so much. Yeah, please give me a thumbs up. Everything I'm sharing is my opinion. So, and opinions are not facts. So we have an A, a B. Anybody else want to get in on this? And Jody says, well, we're not we are basically gathering the evidence, either confirming what the facts are and what they are not. Yes, I agree with that. I think we are. Down the Trail is asking, do you know if law enforcement released cell records showing BK's route on his other night's drive? I'd like to see a couple of months of cell tracking to see if there's a pattern. That's a great question. I don't know, because the prosecution is not sharing anything. The defense is kind of getting their case, and I, tip my hat to Ann Taylor on this. She's, been getting her case out somewhat through these motions, through filing these motions. But the prosecution has kept everything really close to the vest. They have not been sharing a lot of the information that they have. But I would imagine that once they got this alibi that he was driving around, there's going to be a couple of things they're going to check. One, I think they're going to check to see, was this really a habit? Now, if it was him driving to the 1122 King Road house multiple days, multiple nights, I don't think that's going to happen. And if it happened, it stopped. If it stopped the day after these slayings occurred, that's not going to help them either. But if the prosecution can show, look and see, and the defense too, did he have a habit leading up to this? And then did he continue it after? Because if you have insomnia and you have to drive around, then you would continue to do that for, all the way. Did he do it in Pennsylvania when he went back home? So did he continue to do it? And I think that's really important for both the defense and or the prosecution to prove either he did do it or he didn't do it. So that's a great question. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much, Candy. I really appreciate it. If you guys are enjoying this coverage, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. I do plan to stream the trial. And you guys, I'm working on my streaming. You know, I'm mostly a content creator that does very edited videos. I don't do a lot of streaming. So this is, I've done some, but this is the first time I've like tried to share my screen and all that. So this is new for me. Let's see. Truth Exposed says most of the black boxes are from 10 years ago. Only report when the airbags go off. Yeah, I'm curious about the black box too. I've heard some people say that they don't have a black box in this car, and I've heard other people say they do, so I'm not sure. I did tried to research it out, and I couldn't get a definitive answer. It seems like there could be a black box. It depends on if there was one, but it seems like they kind of went into use that year. Mima says there's numerous family members who don't believe in the capital punishment. So my opinion is the prosecution is very confident in their case. Thank you for sharing that. Rebecca Bruce says the defense stance will speak volumes. All right. So I am trying to keep up with the chat. All right. Let's listen to this special report. And I am going to be making some commentary on it.
About that as well. And then Bryan Kohberger, if he is convicted of this crime and faces the death penalty, Idaho has made some very profound changes of late. And it is moving fast. That if the death penalty drugs aren't available, the firing squad is.
And I don't know about you, but I find like there's something sort of horrifying about that to me. I just think that whoever would have to do that would have, if you were part of that squad, I just think it would be, I don't think I could do it. I think it would be very horrifying. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know. There's something horrifying about that. So normally what they try to do is a lethal injection, but thank you so much down the trail, but not always. And Six Sense Amelia is asking about, whoop, I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry, my bad. A fire stick was taken into evidence. I wonder if or what information was on there. Yeah, we know there was like multiple terabytes. That's a lot of information turned over to the defense, and we don't know what they have. Joshua Hopkins says, I think the phone turned off could be misleading. There are very rural mountainous areas. These are large dead zones all over. Phone died. Are we sure? And Green Eye Bandit says a firing squad normally consists of 7 people. Only one person has the full list. So they have the ammo and no one ever knows who the actual shooter is. Yeah, I still think I don't think I could do that. It's 51 terabytes of evidence that links him. It's beyond enough for me. To be honest, I may not know all the facts. That little fact solidified for me. Love the live content. Thank you so much. You guys are so kind. Thank you so much for your encouragement. Let's continue on with this and let me know what you think about. Now they're going to do their first choice is lethal, but the problem is they have trouble, I guess, getting these medications. So this is a backup, but I don't know. For me, it's somewhat horrifying.
What is that going to look like? How does that get carried out? Just logistically, how do you find the marksman? Who gets the blank? We've got all of that for you on this program. And then as we like to do, we like to hear from you. We call it Your Theories. We invite you to send in your 30-second on-camera.
And that's something I would love too. If you would be kind enough to put your theory, it doesn't have to be long, but just put like a brief synopsis of your theory in the top chat or in the comment section below. I would love to read your theories of the case. You guys know that I do read all your comments. If I don't respond to your comment, be careful what words you use. There's some words that are going to be filtered out. So if I don't respond to your comment, it's because your comment got filtered out because of a word. If you use the M word, the K word, those sometimes make it through, but a lot of times they're filtered out and I never get to see the comments. If you use the D word, use medication. If you want to use that word, not legal medication, that will get through. Using some other words don't get through. So think about what words you're using. I love to read your comments, and I would definitely like to hear what your theories are on this. All right, let's continue on together, shall we? Let's continue on.
Selfies to tell us what you think about certain aspects of a crime, how you think it was carried out, what you think about the prosecution, the defense, or any of the machinations of the case as it progresses. And with this one, hearing that murder scene may soon be razed and demolished, that has a lot of.
So that is no longer the case. The 1122 King Road house was going to be demolished. And both the prosecution and the defense had agreed to this. But then in thinking it through, both sides decided they did not want it. And I think that it's really important for maybe the roommate's testimony to understand how sound traveled in that house. I know there's been a lot of people, how could they not have heard it? Well, in Travis Alexander's case with Jodi Arias, he did have 2 roommates and he lay in that bathroom for days. And the roommates were not aware that he was in there. So just because you have a roommate doesn't mean you're in their rooms all the time. So if they didn't have a reason to go to the 3rd floor, they probably wouldn't have. It was Ethan's friend that stopped by that went to that found, reportedly, that found the crime scene. They came upon Ethan and Xana. So the roommates, and he is the one that used one of the roommates' phone to call 911. And we still have not heard that 911 call. So they're not going to take the house down. They're going to leave it because that house had an addition on it. If you've seen the house, you know that it had an addition. The whole back half of that house was added on, which means at some point, the interior of that house would have had an exterior wall. So sound may not have traveled in that particular house the way that it travels in your house or my house. It may have had an exterior wall. And so that's why they've decided to leave this up. I think it's going to be really important to understand what happened and to be able to hear the testimony of the roommates for the jury to be able to go in and actually see how does sound travel in that house. So they've decided not to tear it down. And I think that's really important. Typing with your mouth full. I use a microphone a lot too. And when I say the word channel members, a lot of times it comes up channel numbers. I don't know. But anyway, let's continue on together, shall we? Let's continue on.
A lot of people very concerned about the possibility that a jury visit may not be possible, what that might mean for a conviction.
Thanks
or,
for this.
God forbid, an appeal, as some say. So there's a lot that's on the docket, but I wanted to get for you, word for word, what that exclusive letter from the university to the parents actually said, because it's very thorough, it's very tender, and it's very, very specific. So let's move to the very first story that I told you about, and that was that exclusive letter that we have now obtained that the University of Idaho sent to the parents of all 4 of the victims of the Idaho student murders at 1122 King Road. And it has to do with the future of that home and what's going to happen and when it's going to happen.
And this has since been changed. The prosecution and defense have both decided they don't want this. I'm going to fast forward over this. They do not want the house to come down. I think that's a good idea. I think at some point it does need to come down, but not now. So I'm going to fast forward over this portion and go to the next part. So I think having the house there is going to be really important. I think seeing how sound travels, being that house does have an addition and there was an exterior wall between some of the bedrooms, and we need to know, and the staircase and the bedroom going up and that led up to the 3rd floor, that was complete, that part of that was added on. So we need to know where was it added on, and the jury needs to understand how the sound traveled. And I'm not ignoring your comments. It's just they're coming through quickly. I can't see everybody's comments. Amber says, I sent you on Twitter, thought what the dispatch typed into the computer to finalize the call. Thanks for that. And I'm on Twitter. If you want to follow me, I'm on @Davies Writer. It's under my own name. So you're welcome to hook up with me there. Just comment to me so I know to follow you back. JJ says, my theory is that he did it, that this burning desire to K, that thank you for watching your words, could not be stopped. I believe he has done this deed before. I believe the FBI and or Pennsylvania should be looking at cold case files. I think they probably did. And I don't know if he did this before or not. If you think he did this before, put a 2. No, let me change the numbers because we've already done some polls and I don't want to get mixed up when I'm going back and looking at your comments. If you think he did this before, put a 0 in the chat. If you think that he did not do this before, put a 7 in the chat. Because I don't think he did. I think if he did, we would have heard about it. But you know, I don't know. The prosecution's been really quiet. Green Eyewitness says the house itself is a huge piece of evidence. All jurors should have the opportunity to experience a walkthrough. Yeah, I think so too. In the Murdaugh case, yeah, the jurors got to go to the kennels. And Midwest Mima, sorry about that. I can say when I'm sleeping, anything can happen. I wouldn't hear a thing. I've slept through tornadoes, earthquakes, and goodness knows what else, having raised 5 kids. Thank you for sharing that. Let me catch up to the chat because I'm like so behind. Okay, so we're getting some. So we got 0, a 0, 0, 7, a 0, 7. Yeah, this will help me when I'm going back to like look at the opinions that I know what you guys are referring to. Statistically, this is interesting. SKs commit their first at 28 and a half. Wow. That's interesting. Amelia says, in this case, it's not known by the general public if the victims, yeah, we don't know. And we still don't know the order. We still don't know the order of what happened. We have a 7. Green Eyed Bandit says, over 515 people in your live chat. Awesome, yet overwhelming for you to read. Yeah, I'm trying to respond to everybody. I'm trying to get through it. So, you know, just be patient. I am working my way through. I'm trying to get these. Down the trail says, my intuition tells me that the perp stripped, did a deed in boxer shorts, showered, then redressed. And that would explain what Bethany saw, right? That would explain what Bethany saw. Opinion Einstein has a 0. Jason Puck has a 7. Rosanna has a 7. Zonia says, I'm tired of all these 5-second commercials on my phone. Oh, no. I can't control the commercials. I'm sorry. I don't know. Definitely a walkthrough so they know how the sound travels. Yeah, I think it's really important. We definitely want to have the jury have a walkthrough so they can see how sound travels. I do think the roommates who have not had their say, they've been stuck under this court-imposed gag order. And it's allowed a lot of people to be able to just come through and, you know, interpret what the roommates did or didn't say or didn't do. We don't know yet. All we know is the one thing, which is frozen shock phase. And what Dylan saw, the man wearing all black, 5'10" or taller with bushy eyebrows and wearing a mask. We don't know beyond that. Some people have said, oh, they've had their say. They haven't. Bethany hasn't said anything. And Dylan has had somebody, we don't know if that frozen shock face was just, she froze for a second. When he went by, she just startled and kind of froze and then thought it was okay and went back to bed. You know, I think that if I lived with 4 other young women, college age, and they had boyfriends and friends of their boyfriends and friends of theirs coming over, male friends coming, and it was a party house, I don't know if I would, you know, immediately jump to my friends have all been done away with. So we don't know. But, you know, I think having her be able to explain herself and knowing how the sound travels will help us understand what happened. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up if you're in the top chat. Catherine says 7. All opinions are welcome. Just watch your words because some words are filtered out. So if I don't respond to your comment, it's because I did not see it. Not necessarily in the top chat. Top chat, I just have a lot of comments coming my way. I can't get them all. What I'm trying to grab right now is the poll I just did. So yeah, if you get a membership on YouTube, it does end the commercials. I have one. I like to have a commercial free, but I use some of the videos to fall asleep with. So getting startled with a Yeah, I heard the same thing, Jody, that the crime scene was really, really bad. It was so bad that some of the law enforcement had trouble recovering. I'm very curious as to why it took so long to call law enforcement if others were called prior. Well, my understanding is the roommates were still asleep, and that's a great question. And that Ethan's friend stopped by. Ethan's friend stopped by, and I don't know if he had plans with Ethan or had been trying to call Ethan on the phone, but he stopped by to get him, and that's who found the crime scene. He used one of the roommates' phones to call. This is all reportedly, so we don't have confirmation about this. We'll hear but this has been widely reported by credible sources, and that is who found the crime scene. That is who called it in, and that the passing out may have been whether the friends that was with him or possibly one of the roommates. We don't know yet. Great question. And it was weeks after Halloween. She probably thought they were, yeah. And wearing a mask wouldn't, and also we were just post that whole pandemic thing. So at that point, back in 2022, some people were still putting those on, and it's also cold. So people go outside also in the cold sometimes wearing, one of those winter masks. Yeah, we don't, that's why keeping the house intact to just hear, see, see how everything was traveling, including smells, is really, really important. All right, let's continue on with this together, shall we?
That was a day that was observed by our senior national correspondent, Brian Entin, who was among the media representatives, staying across the street and watching, observing, but out of respect, staying quiet. Brian, that was such a difficult time. I had thought that all the items were brought out of the house, and here we learn that there are still more. Do you have any idea how they'll set up this next transfer of property?
So you can see how much stuff they got out of the house. I mean, it was just unbelievable amount of stuff. And and I do wonder, like, there's been so much we don't know. We still don't know about the van shoe type. We don't know for sure if it was a van shoe or not, but we still don't know about that footprint, if it was related to someone else, if it was related to the crime. There's just so much we don't know, that, we need answers to. Okay, so this is Megatroid says, you've said DM Dylan Mortensen, and I'm just saying their names because the names are out there, and Bethany Funk have been unable to speak because of the gag order. I strongly disagree. They never spoke out of a personal choice for months before there was a gag order. Well, we don't know. My understanding is that they were told not to talk by law enforcement. They honored that. They could have sold their interviews. They could have, gone around and, tried to cash in. They haven't. So, I think that we just need to be mindful of the fact that they have been stuck under a gag order. They're not able to defend themselves. And that I just think I'm just urging caution. I don't want to see someone falsely accused. We all saw the TikToker that falsely accused a professor. I guess this TikToker her name is Ashley. She's a psychic of some kind, and she thought the professor had something to do with it, and the professor didn't. The professor didn't have anything to do with it, but it still really did hurt the professor's reputation to the point where the professor ended up getting.
I think we're looking at
the professor ended up getting all kinds of hate and threats and all of that. So I just think we need to be mindful of the fact that, these roommates, they haven't had their say yet, and we need to let them have their say before we rush to judgment or rush to accuse someone if they did not have anything to do with it. And they were from my understanding, they were grilled very hard by law enforcement. Law enforcement was really, really suspicious of them because they had survived. They always work from the inside out. So they would have gone from the roommates to boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, family members, and they would have worked from the inside out on ruling people out. So they did go through, but they had this white Hyundai Elantra that they had on camera. And we still have not seen the camera footage on that. So I'm just urging caution with the roommates. I just don't want to see there be a big rush to judgment. W. Smith says smell is very important since the police say they could smell it as soon as they walked in. Yeah. And we don't know, where, if you had your door closed, could you smell it? I don't know. So I had no idea there was so much stuff. Rebecca Bruce says, I think law enforcement kept a tight lid on everything, even having a lead or suspect until he was actually arrested. There's so much more to the story. Yeah, for those of you that have been with the channel for a long time, know I was like all over going through all of the different people I was also working from the inside out. I went through the roommates. I went through the ex-boyfriends. I went through the current boyfriends. Went through the family members, and I have a playlist, if you haven't seen it, where I did go through everybody. And when they arrested him, for me, it kind of came out of nowhere because he wasn't even on my radar. Nobody had ever heard of this guy. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. Well, they laid there for hours, but remember in the Jodi Arias case, I want to be careful. The Jodi Arias case, he lay in that room for 3 days, and the police couldn't believe that the 2 male roommates that he lived with didn't smell anything either. But with the door closed, they said they didn't. They said that they just thought, it was old food or something like that. They didn't know what it was. They certainly didn't jump to he had been done away with. And so Travis Alexander also had roommates, and they also did not know. So I just, with the roommates, I'm just urging caution because we've seen, and again, with that, the law enforcement worked from the inside out. They started out with roommates. And with Travis Alexander, let's go back to the trauma bonding a little bit. Why did he continue to interact with Jodi Arias? She was obsessive. She was stalking him. She was, not respecting his boundaries. These are all big red flags that, I think most of us watch out for. But if you know a little bit about Travis Alexander's parents, his parents were both medication addicted. The mother had neglected him. I'm not going to use the A word. I can't use it on YouTube, but also not taken care of him. And even done some things that were not good to him. So to him, the red flags that would have probably set off alarms for you or for me didn't set off any red flags for Travis Alexander. In fact, there was probably some trauma bonding in that he was actually attracted to this stalker type of behavior. He because of what had happened to him in his own childhood. So, but his roommates, Travis Alexander's roommates, he was in that bathroom for 3 days. They didn't smell anything. They didn't hear anything. They didn't know and that went for 3 days, not hours, days. And they still did not have anything to do with it. I mean, Jodi Arias literally took pictures of herself inadvertently of carrying out what happened to Travis Alexander. So we have proof. Green Ibn says, oh my gosh, can you imagine being a jury having to see all the crime scene photos? Yeah. And I'm going to be streaming the trial. I have not heard anything about that near Brian's house, Amber. If you know anything, send me a link on Twitter and I also have a Facebook chat room called Reporter Room. You're welcome to, I'm in there most days and you can send me stuff in there too. Gilly says, hi, Gilly. And Amelia says, is it possible that the family sought immediate legal advice? I know the roommates both have lawyers. but I don't know about the families. But I heard the roommates were questioned very roughly. And I don't know if they have lawyers because of all the defamation that's going on against them, or if they have lawyers for some other reason. But I know they have reportedly have lawyers. DM and BF, whether advised by lawyers or not, chose not to speak. It's always a choice. It isn't a choice if there is a court order. It's not a choice. You'll be held in contempt and you can go to jail. So it isn't a choice if there's a court order. And it really isn't a choice if law enforcement specifically asks you not to, and you don't want to mess up the case. These were their friends. As much as we care, the people who knew and loved them would have, these were their friends. So you wouldn't want to do something that's going to mess up the case for your friends. You don't want to be taking the blame for that because you decided to go on TV and sell your interview. I mean, I think it's pretty classy to not go sell your interview, because for sure they would have gotten one, in my opinion. I think any major news network would have any one of the roommates on in a heartbeat, and a lot of people would pay for interviews to have a chance to interview them. But they didn't cash in. They didn't write a book. They haven't sold their stories. They didn't sell their story to Netflix. I think they've been very classy about it, and I think they loved their friends. And maybe, can we just maybe think that maybe they, have been acting in a responsible way, that this isn't them trying to hide something, that maybe this is just them being responsible for their friends and responsible to the families of their friends. What do you guys think? Richard Cottingham, Ted Bundy, Bryan Kohberger, Sunday Morning, all of them have birthdays in November. 51 of them. Wow, that's interesting trivia I haven't heard before. Very interesting. BK may be much smarter than we think, is possibly running the defense. Yeah, we don't know. I think Ann Taylor is a really good defense attorney, and we don't know how much of these motions is her and how much of them is he's asking her. That's a excellent point. Jody Jackson says, I never thought that the roommates were in on it, in my opinion. Yeah, I just am urging caution on that. Let's just wait and see what they have to say. Rick says, oh, he's talking to somebody else. Sometimes fails. I was born and raised in the Poconos, very near where he was. What was the female's name? Yeah, I don't. Let's see. Yusaki Wee says, who is the red-haired guy, and is he a smoker? Who is the redhead guy? I don't know which redhead guy you're talking about. Are you talking about Jack D, the boyfriend of the ex-boyfriend of Kaylee? I've never seen him smoke, so I don't know. 3 days. Yeah, that was Jodi Arias did away with Travis Alexander. We know it was her because she literally took photos of herself doing it. But she went to his funeral. She had stored up gas cans in her car so she wouldn't have to stop to get gas to try to keep herself being caught on CCTV footage. She was acting completely normal the next day. But the roommates were initially, the boys, there were 2 roommates. The law enforcement could not understand how he lay there for 3 days, and the 2 roommates didn't know about it. But remember, with the 2 roommates, unless you're breaking boundaries, you're not going into your roommates' rooms. If you don't think anything's wrong and they, hadn't seen him for a couple days, again, law enforcement was like, well, you didn't see him. But when it's roommates, you're not sitting down every night like a family does to have dinner. You just, see each other when you see each other. And it was actually his friends who stopped by, someone who was dating him that was looking for him because she was supposed to go on a trip with him and hadn't heard from him. And she and friends stopped by, and that's who found it, not the roommates. And they were there. So this has happened before. And that's why I'm just urging caution on this. Sixth Sense Amelia. Oh yeah, please give me a thumbs up. It does really help. Please subscribe if you haven't already. All opinions are welcome. The only thing I ask is share them respectfully. If I don't respond to your comment, it's because it's got filtered out. So think about the words you're using. Don't use medication instead of the D word. Don't use the K word. Sometimes they come through, but a lot of times I have to go back in and find them. So just think about the words that you're using. Jessica, is there any materials you need to go live on October 2nd with this trial? I have the link. And what I'm doing today is actually really good practice for me. So thank you for that, Green-Eyed Bandit. We're going to be, if you guys want to join us, we're going to be live streaming this together. We're going to watch the trial together. It'll be a nice opportunity to connect with other people who are interested in the case and interested in true crime. And you're most welcome to join us. I would consider just subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you get notified when I go live. But there's going to be a delay. So my understanding is that we do think this is going to be televised as of right now. There is going to be a delay, a little bit of a delay. I don't know if it's going to be like a second delay or a minute delay. I don't know how the delay is going to go, but there is going to be a delay, but we are going to get to see the trial. And I think there'll probably be some restrictions on how close they can get on to BK to protect the integrity of the case. We all want this case to be tried fairly. And Opinion Isis says, I bet if you took the dog around BK, it would go crazy. Yeah, a lot of people have been wondering about this dog, and I told you my theory, so I'll give it to you for those of you that don't know. But so just a speculation trigger warning here. If you don't like speculation, you can mute this part or you can fast forward over it. But I think Maddie and Kaylee went up to Maddie's room, and they were both in Maddie's room. We know they were messaging Jack. They were calling Jack Decor. And and this was Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. The breakup had been recent. A lot of people want to know why, they wouldn't have wanted to date Bryan. Well, Maddie was in a relationship with her boyfriend, Jake, who has been cleared. Kaylee had recently, just a few weeks before, broken up with Jack Decor. So she probably wasn't ready for any kind of relationship. But leading up to that, she was in a relationship. So I think, they had seen him at the corner club. I showed you guys, if you haven't seen the videos, I have video of Jack Decor at the corner club. Or pictures, I should say, screenshots of him at the corner club that night. And I think that Maddie was probably trying to go to sleep or was going to sleep. And I think Kaylee went into her own room. I think maybe she was up. Maybe she was having some difficulty sleeping, or maybe she just felt upset about the fact that he wasn't picking up the phone. And it could be just that he had the phone off because he was trying to sleep. A lot of people put their phone on silent when they're sleeping. But, she could have just been up a little bit. And I think she went into her own room and took Murphy in there. And because we know Dylan heard someone playing with Murphy. She thought she heard Kaylee playing with Murphy the dog. And I think that she was probably in her own room playing with Murphy the dog so as not to disturb Maddie. She wasn't sleeping in there. She was just in there playing with the dog. And that's what Dylan heard. And then Dylan thought she heard Kaylee say, quote, there's someone here. And I think Kaylee heard someone, came out of her room, closed the door behind her, leaving Murphy in the room. And this is why Murphy was untouched, and was warning Maddie, there's someone here. Now, again, she may have just thought it was a friend or something like that. But that is how Murphy ended up, I think, with no DNA or any kind of evidence on him in Kaylee's room, because we know that he didn't like to sleep alone. He would scratch and fuss if he was left alone in the room. So I think she was in the room with him playing leading up to this. And this is, what Dylan reportedly heard. So I'm very interested to see Dylan take the stand and hear it from her own lips of what she heard and saw. And also, how did sound travel and all of that. Granny Beth says, Jessica, are there any? Oh, I already went with that one. Sorry about that. Okay, I bet if you took the dog around, BK would go crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Travis was thinking with the wrong head, in my opinion. Yeah, and for him, I just think that, trauma bonding played a role. Trauma bonding played a role. I mean, there would have been decomp smell at that point, in my opinion. After 3 days, there would have been definitely decomp smell. But the roommates didn't know what it was. They didn't recognize it. They, the police officers asked them about it, like, how did you not smell it? And they said, well, we just thought it was rotten food. And if you look at the house at 1122 King Road, we also know that this exterior wall, the house was added onto. So there was an exterior wall that was added onto. So we don't know exactly how sound travels. We don't know how the smell travels. And we don't know, even if you did smell it, if you would know what you were smelling. I mean, remember, these were just, young girls. These were just young. They were really young. It makes sense for Amber, in keeping with my theory. Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer both stated earlier and definitively why the guy from Alaska did also. 28 may be the norm, but some start earlier. Richard Ramirez. Yeah, that's for those of you that are channel members. And then Megatroy says that produces an odor of iron. That amount would have had a very strong smell. Right. I agree. What we don't know is if they would have recognized what the smell was. Would you know if you didn't know, if you'd never smelled it? And I never have. Would you know what it smells like? I don't know. But I think it's really good that they didn't take the house down, because it does give everybody a chance to see how to smell travel, how to sound travel, all the stuff that you guys are bringing up. These are great points. And, these are questions I'm sure that the jury is going to have. These are questions I'm sure the defense is going to raise. And these are questions I'm sure that the prosecution is going to raise. Cleared BK from any involvement in that woman's case. Yeah, that was my understanding too, that there was some other case. And we know that his parents had to testify in something, but it didn't involve him. Dana Smithers. There you go. If you guys want to look up that one. And the dog can remember the smell and would still know. Yeah. If only the dog could testify. But the roommates would not know what they were smelling. Right. I agree. You wouldn't know what it smelled like if you never smelled it. You might know there's an unusual smell, but you might have thought somebody was cooking, or maybe somebody left food out or something like that. I don't think you would immediately jump to. My friends have all been done away with, especially. And I think this is one of the things that has really, captured the attention of a lot of people on this case, is that these young people should have been safe. They were out in pairs. They were sleeping in the house with other people. They weren't alone. It wasn't like one person alone in their house. They were sleeping in a house with other people. And I think that's one of the most horrifying things about this is, Maddie and Kaylee were out together. They should have been safe. They were upstairs together. Ethan and Xana were out together. They should have been safe. They were in their room together. So it's, I think that's another thing that's kind of grabbed all of us on this case, is that everybody was together. Saki says, I wouldn't wish trying to see the crime scene photos anyway. No, I wouldn't want to do that either. And Dana is not connected to BK. Thanks for that, Winter Carnival. Rick says, oh yes, she was found right by where the Waffle House used to be. His parents subpoenaed for that case, but it was found to be no correlation. Yeah, she was a lot older. Yeah, and I heard he was not accused in that case. I don't know what they had to testify to, and maybe it wasn't even related to BK. Maybe it was something completely different. I don't know. His eyes look so empty and evil. He looks like a predator. For Amber says, they didn't clear him. They just haven't stated that he's a suspect in that case yet. Fair point. Green Eye Bandit says, if anyone has ever experienced someone who would not leave you alone, you were out there by yourself trying to get rid of this person who was like a flea infestation or bed bugs. Yeah. And I think there's some things you can do, like take a look around your own house, make sure your blinds are closed, make sure there isn't a way for somebody to just become fixated on you. Because these peeping toms that we used to think were so harmless, they, didn't do anything. We've learned now that they do become fixated, and it turns into stalking and an obsession. And that's, we saw this in the Jodi Arias case, where there was this stalking obsession thing. And I do have a Reporter Room Facebook group. We're covering Lindsay Shriver, who's the beauty queen who hired a hitman to take out her husband. Bryan Kohberger, the Idaho 4 case. We do a bunch of different cases in there. Alex Murdaugh has been another big one we've done this year. Is Idaho a one-shot state as far as prosecution goes? This is why every state has double jeopardy. You can't, if he's found not guilty, then he's not guilty. That's every state in the United States. Yusakiwi says, if two surviving roommates were male, they would have been suspects immediately, and maybe BF and Dylan were kept under wraps. I think my understanding is that they were suspects initially. Everybody was. They worked from the inside out, and they were grilled, just like Travis Alexander's roommates were grilled. They were grilled and ruled out. So I think that they were probably everybody was a suspect at some point in this case, right? The roommates, the boyfriends, the ex-boyfriends, the family members, the friends. They would have the people that they knew from school. They worked from the inside out. But at the same time, they had this car they picked up on CCTV, and they had this touch DNA sample on that knife sheath. So did I give out my Instagram? I didn't. I am on there. I just started the Instagram. I'm not that active on there, but yeah, join me on Instagram. I could be more active on there. I just haven't been that active. I'm more active on Twitter and Facebook, but I do have Instagram, and I'm on TikTok too. I'm just not that active on those two platforms. I definitely, YouTube is probably my favorite social media platform. But this is the reporter room. If you want to join me, and this is my handle for Twitter. It's actually my name. I'm one of the few content creators who's out there as myself, which is another reason why I'm like trying to be careful of the information I put out there. So Yusaki says, who was the she that Kaylee's family said had an alibi too soon? I don't know. I don't know. They were under a gag order, but they're not now. But I still think there's some limitations on what they can speak on and what they can't. But they and their lawyers were under a gag order. Pam, totally agree. Thanks for that, Pam. Thank you so much for all our mods, subscribers, and channel members. I really appreciate you guys. For Amber says, yeah, they may have. It just means that they didn't find a connection. We'll see many times that the culprit was cleared at the beginning of the investigation, yet come to find out who they are. Well, I would normally agree with that, except for somebody has been indicted. So again, I'm urging caution. Let's just hear what the prosecution has before we all rush to judgment on this. I just don't want to see somebody living under threats just because they were a roommate. In the Jody Arias Travis Alexander case, his roommates were also, very suspect, but they were young, not as young as these young girls were, but they were still young, and they didn't hear anything or know, and he was in there for 3 days. So I'm urging caution. Let's just be careful before we all start pointing fingers, being that law enforcement has cleared them and we don't know how they cleared them or why, but we will find out at the trial. So I see this gag order is not to protect the prosecution's case. It's to protect Brian's right to a fair trial by not contaminating a potential jury pool. You are right. You can't just connect Brian to every cold case because there are 50 active SKs right now. I agree. I agree. BK is not in control. He is putty in AT's hands and is, I don't know, Lisa, if he is or isn't. I don't know if he isn't in control or not in control. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think, let's do a poll. Let's do a poll. If you think that BK is running the show and is running the defense, put a, I'm like thinking of what I can put in the chat. Put a, I don't want to do emojis because I'm worried you guys won't have access to that if you're on a computer. So put a 4 in the chat. If you think BK is running the defense team behind the scenes, put a 4 in the chat. If you think BK is not running the defense team and that Ian Taylor is running the defense team, put a 5 in the chat. And let's see what you guys, let's just do an informal poll here because that's a great question, Lisa. I'd love to know the answer to. See, this gag order is not, yeah, I did that one and I agree. Let me scroll down. I think I'm trying to keep up with the chat. And I am on Instagram. You're welcome to connect with me. I'll get more active on Instagram if you guys want me to. Megatrod said they weren't responsible enough for their friends to get help. How many hours? Well, I just, again, feel like it is too bad that we don't, there, was hours that went by, but this is not the only time that this has happened. This happened in the Jodi Arias case. Travis Alexander's roommates, he was there on the floor in the bathroom for 3 days, and they didn't, and there would have been a smell. Like the police officers, I think they're on body cam footage with the police officers asking them about this, if you want to pull up that case. And Rosanna says, this is truly an enjoyable life. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your encouragement. If I could give you 2 thumbs up, I would. Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much, you guys. And Winter Carnival says, BK has no connection. Well, I mean, he has some connection because he's been charged. We just don't know what all the evidence is. Remember, the prosecution hasn't put on their case. The defense hasn't put on their case. So I think having your own opinions is fine. Just continue sharing them respectfully, and just understand that we have not heard from a lot of people in this case, and that's okay. It's okay. For Amber says he is a criminal justice major. Yeah, he has his master's degree in criminal justice, and he was a PhD candidate. I haven't seen anybody from the polls. Let me scroll down. Did you know that one of the owners of the house was a registered SO? No, I have not heard that. If you have a link to a credible source on that, Sue's FM, you're welcome to share with me, and I will definitely look into it. I have not heard anything about that, but I want to be careful not to say anything. I just want to thank Green Eyed Bandit for being a channel member for 3 months. Really appreciate that. So yeah, what is a credible source? A credible source would be, in journalism, we look for like major news outlets, and usually I look for like a consensus. I look for several, because at least they're going to vet their sources. So most editors are not, hey Jamwar, most editors are not going to let you just run with the story without verifying some stuff. So like if they said let's say the 7 sirens people that came forward, they're going to ask for a pay stub to prove that they did really work. They really were servers at the 7 sirens. They may call the 7 sirens to verify before they air it. Most editors, not all, but most, are very careful about what they air and what they print. And if there is an error in the reporting, they'll come forward and correct it. Like I reported out that BK did not have any friends. And at the top of this video, I reported that, and I thank JT 2023 for this, that BK did have friends. So I made the correction. Most people who have ethics will come forward and make the corrections. True Crime Nut, hey, I feel like if DM woke hearing what she thought, Kaylee playing with her dog on the 3rd floor, and then got up 2 after that, it's not too soundproof. Well, but Kaylee was not done away with in her room. She was done away with in Maddie's room. So if you look at the way the house is, there's an addition that was added on to the back of that house. So the bedrooms on that side of the house have a exterior wall between the bedrooms on the other side of the house. So that's why I think it's really important the house hasn't been torn down, because all of the things that you guys are worried about are going to be the same things that the prosecution and defense are going to bring up also. So you guys are bringing up some great points, and you guys do deserve answers on all of these. So if you want to watch the trial together, you can. Michelle says this is so crazy. The whole thing is crazy. The case is crazy. Judy says they have ruled out BK in reference to the missing woman and the other crimes. Yes, you are right, Judy. That is my understanding as well. Mega Troy says, look at past reports from NewsNation where it was reported multiple times. Thanks for that. Yusaki Wee says, Jack T must feel terrible for not answering the calls from Kaylee or Maddie's phone. Yeah, can you imagine? I wondered about that weird look. Before he was cleared, I had him on my radar. For those of you that have been with my channel from the beginning, I was like working from the inside out as well. And because that breakup was so recent and because of those 10 phone calls, I just, couldn't get past that. But he has been ruled out. But yeah, I would think the survivor's guilt would just be immense. And that also explains the look that Kaylee's dad gave him. I wonder if there was some frustration on that part of that too. DoorDash, and my understanding is that on the DoorDash delivery, it was not BK. And law enforcement knows who it was. They've ruled the person out, and I suspect we're going to see this person come forward. I know there's been a lot of speculation as to who it was, but we don't know. There's been no credible information that tells us. There's been speculation and rumor, and different names have popped up, but we don't know for sure who the DoorDash driver is. But one thing I can tell you is that law enforcement knows who the DoorDash driver is. Down the trail says, excellent point about the male versus females. Anyone could become a perp if they were paid enough money. Yeah. Leslie says that she does not think this was his first time. Thank you for sharing that. That is our poll. If you think it was his first time, or if you think it was not his first time, let me know. Opinion Einstein says they said they found an animal hair in BK's car. The hair could solve the whole case. You're right. They found an animal hair, and I thought it was in the apartment, but maybe it was the car. So, yeah, I think that, and they found other hairs too, and 2 blood stains. So we've heard that there was no victim DNA in the car, office, or apartment. What we don't know is if there was any perp DNA under any of the victims' fingernails or we know it was left behind, the law enforcement believes, on the knife sheath snap. Michelle believes that BK is playing games. Thank you so much. Yeah, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Danielle says B. I'm going to go back through these and go through the top chat and get these polls for future reference. Jody says absolutely. Leslie says, I still wonder if the dad helped him or knew about it and didn't come forward. If it was your kid, would you? Wow, would you if it was your kid? Just put a yes or no in the chat. I don't think his dad, I know there's been a lot of speculation about his dad and that 9-hour detour that they took from Pullman, Washington back to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, to me is a big red flag. But I don't think his dad knew anything about it. What I suspect is that his dad went out there because of the altercation that was going on between BK and his professor. Remember, he was getting these notifications, right? He was getting notified by this male professor that he needed to do better. He had been grading female students differently than male students, and apparently this escalated to the point that there was a quote altercation. So altercation, it doesn't sound like it was physical, but it was more than just a disagreement. So altercation to me is, it was a pretty serious argument, but not to the point where it got physical. And BK ended up losing his job as a teaching assistant, which meant that he was going to lose his tuition for his PhD program, because that's all tied together, and lose funding for his housing. So I think his dad, this is a speculation, trigger warning. I think his dad just went out there because he was concerned about his son. But we have heard reports, and again, this is not verified, this is alleged, that his sister wondered if he did it. I don't know who Edmund Kemper is. If anybody knows, let me know in the chat. Down the trail says, I wonder if victims were before the unaliving. I don't know. I don't think so. Thank you so much, Green Eyed Bandit. I don't think that happened. I think that there, probably had been partying and drinking going on, and that maybe, why everybody was still sleeping. But we don't know. And people do take stuff to sleep too. It could have been that everybody was drinking, including the roommates, had had a couple drinks, or not. It could be somebody took an Ambien to go to sleep. I mean, we just don't know everything, but I am confident that we're going to find out at the trial, because if the prosecution doesn't bring it up, the defense is going to for sure. And we're still talking about the smell. Yeah, I do think there would have been a smell, but I don't know how it would have traveled, being that there was an addition on the back of that house. I don't know how sound would have traveled. Like she reports hearing somebody, Kaylee playing with Murphy the dog, and Murphy was found in Kaylee's old bedroom. But because of the addition on the house, was Maddie's room added on later, and was there a soundproof wall, not a soundproof, but an exterior wall between where Dylan was sleeping and where Maddie was sleeping? That's why it's really important that the house wasn't torn down and everybody can have a chance to see how it travels. Yeah, it is going to travel differently in a furnished house versus an empty house. And we don't know what all was torn out of the house. If they took any of the cabinets or any of the drywall was taken, we don't know, but it may be a little bit different. But it's good that it's still there and that the jury will have a chance to see the house, because I think that's going to be, I do think all of the questions that you have about how sound traveled, how smells traveled, I think these are all really legitimate concerns. And I think they are going to be the same concerns that the jury is going to have. So I think these are great questions and comments that you guys are making. And Leslie says she knows that smell. Yeah, if you worked in a situation where the smell, I don't know if I would have recognized the smell or not. I might have thought it was an unusual smell, but I don't know if I would have gone right to it's blood. Let me scroll down here. I'm behind on the chat. I'm trying to keep up. Let's see. It's obvious. Arlene says it's obvious that BK caught them off guard. I would think that they would have felt pretty safe. They were in pairs. They weren't sleeping alone in the room. I do think that Kaylee went in her own room to play with Murphy. Maybe Maddie was trying to go to sleep, but she didn't want to disturb her. I don't think she was trying to go to sleep in her own room. I just think she took the dog in there to play. She maybe couldn't sleep. And Kaylee heard something, because Dylan reports hearing Kaylee playing with the dog, what she thought was Kaylee playing with the dog. Now, maybe it wasn't. Maybe something else was going on. There was a scuffle and she just assumed that's what it was. But she may have honestly heard Kaylee playing with the dog. And then maybe, Kaylee closed the door behind, leaving Murphy in there and said, trying to warn Maddie, or maybe she just thought Maddie called somebody over. Maybe she thought Jack showed up because they had been calling. We don't know what was running through Kaylee's mind, but we know that from Dylan that she did say someone's here. But maybe she just thought Jack showed up and it wasn't a warning, or maybe she was trying to warn Maddie. That is probably something we'll never have the answer to. But I do think that whoever did this definitely caught them off guard for sure. They were sleeping in pairs and should have been safe. Big Trust, I suspect BK's parents just don't have the money to travel cross country to visit or live temporarily there to support him. Well, yeah, his dad flew out to drive back with him. I suspect, I think it's unusual because they could have definitely flown BK back, but they didn't. They didn't fly him back. They stayed out there. So, is there a reason for this? Britain law isn't American law. Yeah, you're right, Regina. You are right. The laws are different. So if he is found not guilty, there is double jeopardy. He cannot be tried again. If he is found guilty, he can appeal. He can appeal. Deetra Ed says, I read about it. It takes, oh, wow. Yeah, that's really sad. 5 minutes isn't a long time. But it's just horrible. The whole thing is awful. And I think that's why it's caught all of us, all of our hearts, this case, because these were such young people, because they were beautiful, because they were in pairs. They were sleeping together. They were together upstairs together on the second floor. They should have been safe. They had gone out in pairs that night. They should have been safe, and yet they weren't. And the idea that somebody, could fixate on us without us knowing, and that's what's being purported. If you see some of the other videos, I did show you guys all of the news articles. I showed them in not the last video, but I did 3 videos last week. They're in the first 2, I think, where I did show the news articles that say that there are reports that he was DMing at least one of the victims on Instagram. There are also reports that he had an ID that belonged to one of the victims. And I'm going to say allegedly, even though I do consider journalistic sources like major news outlets to be more credible than just a social media post on Reddit or something like that. Not to discredit Reddit. I love Reddit, but just to say just somebody making a comment on Reddit is not going to have the same credibility that a mainstream outlet like the BBC or ABC or something like that has. So I do think it's really interesting. We do have, multiple sources that are saying that that there were connections, There were photos of one of the victims also reportedly found on his phone. Now, I don't know if these were taken himself or if these were downloaded on social media. And if it was downloaded on social media, I guess a big question from there would be, did it happen before or did it happen after the slayings on November 13th? If it was before, it's kind of creepy. If it was after, maybe not so creepy. So I think, but there were some connections found. And then we also have Kaylee's own father who said that he on ABC, he said that that Kaylee had thought she had a stalker. We all remember Steve saying that. And also that he didn't say how or why, and this may be something he's been asked not to speak on yet, but he also reported that there were connections between Kaylee and BK. So, make of that what you will. All opinions are welcome, as long as everybody's respectful, and everybody has been. I'm so grateful for that. It's nice to be able to just have a conversation about this. I do take the time to go through the comments in the comment section. I wish we could get on this jury. And, W. Smith, I'm kind of glad I'm not, because I do want to report on the case. So that would be a conflict of interest. But I do think we're going to learn a lot during the trial. I mean, we sure did on Alex Murdaugh, right? Whatever you thought going into it. I think, finding out that Paul Murdaugh had done that Snapchat video, and you can hear Alex Murdaugh's in the voice at the dog kennels when he claimed to law enforcement that he was not at the dog kennels that night. It kind of blew his alibi out of the water. And I think that was a big piece of evidence. I don't know if we'll have a smoking gun like that on this case or not, or if it will just be cumulative. It's going to be a circumstantial case for sure. Jody says, I'm glad they retained the house for the juror. Cold cases usually have to build a model to see how the space and sound travel, the doors and location. I think that I agree with you. I think the jurors are going to want to see the house. I think they'll be taken to the house. And I also think that they're, maybe the prosecution and the defense want to go in and just see how sound and noise and smells, how everything travels in that house. Deetra said, that's why I said about case it can probably vary, but regardless, you usually don't live that long. Yeah. Yeah, I know there's been some, people feeling upset. And I heard that Ethan's family was upset because, they wish people had called earlier. They just wanted to know what happened. And they may have answers to that question now. They may have answers to the question of what happened and how long their loved ones lived there. But you got to think at the beginning of this case that the family members didn't know how long their loved ones had been on the floor. And if law enforcement had been called sooner, if paramedics had been called sooner, if something couldn't have been done. But that's an older interview. So I'm wondering that if they do have those answers now, I don't, of how long they would have lived. Murray says they're going to try to pin it on the Demetrius guy. You're talking about the defense? I don't know. They could. Born to be Wild says, I don't care what you, oh, okay. Innocent until proven guilty. Yeah, he is innocent until proven guilty, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. Just let's share it respectfully. And I think everybody has a right to their opinion. And everybody has a right. It's a mystery to me, the whole case. Don't know what to think at all. And that's okay. I think being on the fence is an okay place to be. If you're not sure, I think it's an okay place to be because we haven't seen the trial yet. I think what bothers me is when I have people saying, we have all the evidence and I know already what I think. I think that kind of like, it's like, well, we don't have all the evidence. We don't have anything yet. We haven't seen either side of the case. We haven't seen the prosecution or the defense. So I think it's okay to be on the fence. I think that's an okay place to be. Juanita says, I think Kaylee played with Murphy in her room and then walked in on what happened to Maddie. I think that is my theory also. I think she said, I think Dylan, I believe Dylan's statement that's in the affidavit. I think she did hear Kaylee say, I think someone's here. And I think she would have come out of her room, closed the door behind, leaving the dog in there to see who it was. And again, it may have been her sounding the alarm, but it could also have been that she thought it was Jack D who was stopping by. It may have been said very calmly and not sounding the alarm. We just don't know. JJ Andrew says, it won't allow me to send messages because it reads that account doesn't follow messages from new requests. Well, if you're on social media, you'll have to wait for me to follow back. So you should be able to comment though, but you may not be able to DM me till I follow you back. And I'm not on there right now following people back because I'm on here on YouTube Live with you guys. So if you're trying to message me on social media and you're trying to DM me, I do follow people back on Twitter. So just message me, leave me a comment and let me know that, hey, I'm on YouTube. Can you follow me back? I want to send you something. I don't do the PMs on Facebook. I do because I have a chat room called the Reporter Room. You can go in there and interact with me. So I don't do PMs on Facebook. I do them on Twitter. So yeah, just give me a chance to follow you back. I'm just not on there right now. Was that to be Kaylee's last night there? Well, we know I think she already had her last night there, right? Because my understanding is that she was, moving to Texas. She got a new job. So she had stopped by to show her best friend, her childhood friend, Maddie, her car. So she was super excited and probably to, get to spend time with Maddie and maybe to see Jack also. But yeah, it's really sad. And Rick says, yeah, gag order will have that effect, unfortunately. JJ says, I didn't click on the link. I logged on and searched for her. It allowed me to message her. So if you're messaging me on Twitter, I probably just need to follow you back. But you can leave me a comment and then but I will follow you back if you want to DM me or send me a link on Twitter. That's the best way to get hold of me is on Twitter at Davies Writer. But I'm not following back right now because I'm live on YouTube. So I'm not following back right this second, but I will follow back, especially if I know you're from YouTube. Just let me know. A former resident of the house says that sounds within the house travel freely, said the soundproofing was terrible. Very interesting. And again, we don't know, how it all sounds, but the jury will definitely, I think it's something that we will want to find out. And I think, the roommates will be able to share some of that stuff. They were in there with their door closed. We know Dylan was woken up, so we know some sound was traveling. We just don't know what and how, right? Thank you to everyone. Let's take my Chihuahua is putting positive. Yeah, everybody's been so polite in the chat. I really appreciate everybody sharing their opinions and being so polite to each other. It's so nice. I'm pretty sure it's the same in America. If it isn't, it should be. And Amelia, she's one of our mods. Thank you to our mods, channel members, and subscribers. I really appreciate all of you guys for your support. All opinions are welcome, as long as you're respectful and watch. And language doesn't have to necessarily be when you're like leaving me a comment in the comment below, if I don't like react to your comment, it's because it got stuck in a filter. So if you use the M word or the SK word, those will get filtered out by YouTube. So just like I don't say them on the platform, they'll get filtered out of the comment section. So sometimes links will get filtered out because they think that it's spam. And sometimes I go back in to see if something's been filtered out and I'll add it. And sometimes I'll miss comments because they get filtered out. So just think about the language that you're using. Don't use the D word, use the word medication instead if you want to talk about that, because that will be filtered out. I'm sorry that someone's been rude to you. Let's try to be polite in the chat to each other. Complaints of an unconscious person, officers and EMs responded. Yeah. So what we've heard about this, and again, this hasn't been testified to in court, is that Ethan's friend stopped by. He had plans. And he is the one that found Ethan and or Xana. And he got one of the roommates' phones. And I don't know if he woke up the roommates or got them out of the room, but somebody passed out. I don't know if it was somebody that was with Ethan's friend that called 911. We haven't heard the 911 call, so this is all just what we've heard through the mainstream media. But somebody did faint, and we have heard that the crime scene was horrific. I kennel my dogs or close them in the room if I think someone's coming by, so my company doesn't get mauled or kisses. Yeah, and this was a puppy. This was a puppy. So, anyway, here we have another one doing the poll. We got a 7. Opinion. Epstein says, not sure what happened with the poll, but only my child is a girl. If she hurt someone, I would say I did it. Oh, so you would take the responsibility. Yeah, we were doing a poll on Brian's dad. I think he just went out there because he knew his son was having a hard time. I don't think he would have immediately jumped to, my son did away with 4 young people. I don't think he went there in his head. I don't think any parent would. I just think that he probably went out there to help his son drive home, and he probably knew that his son had lost his teaching job, which would have meant losing his financial assistance to get his PhD. And we don't know if he was removed from the PhD program at that point or if he was planning to go back. Maybe he didn't know if he was going to go back or not. We heard some of the things were taken out of the apartment, but there were things also left in the apartment too. So BK hated flying. There you go. Regina, right? It doesn't. Oh, okay. All right. Let's not do that, guys. Please don't do that. I'm going to delete that out of the comments. Please don't do that. Please don't call names. You guys can have different opinions, and we just want to keep the chat, wholesome. Let's keep it friendly. I want everybody to feel like they can share their opinions without being called names, without anybody insulting anybody else. I want everybody to have the ability to share their own thoughts on stuff. So, oh no, he deserves his day in court, but he will be found guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. Taylor tried saying company policies were violations of law and grounds to dismiss. Thank you for sharing that. Deetra says instincts can be wrong. Evidence is much better. So I had asked and John Nelson says Kohberger's Google search history will come out during the trial. Yeah, you're right. And we don't, we've heard the reports that were reported out by multiple mainstream media outlets that he was messaging at least one of the victims on Instagram. They'll have his searches. We know that a computer was removed from the apartment. I don't know if it had been wiped or not. We know from the Chris Watts case that NK deleted, and he deleted a lot of stuff off their cell phone. So I don't know if, anything was deleted or not deleted. We just don't know. Jody says, not saying he is or isn't, but sometimes you just know, like Alex Murdaugh and Lori Vallow. Wally says, I have no child, but if he or she came to confess, it would be the hardest time and choice. Yeah. I can't even imagine how hard that would be to, because you love your child unconditionally. Greed-eyed bandits talking about body cams. I think if it was caught on body cam, I think law enforcement, this is my opinion, I think they would have access to their own body cams. And I think they would have been, again, working from the inside out. So I don't think people that are, were caught on body cams would not have been thoroughly investigated. So that's where I am like a little bit not jumping all over the body cam stuff, because I have been working from the inside out. Law enforcement's been working from the inside out. So they would have started with all of that information and then worked outward. So Regina's, thank you for that, Regina. Appreciate that. Yeah, it can we have different stuff. I'm trying to keep up with the chat, y'all. Okay. Hasbro says, if his family knew, he wouldn't have to separate his trash from the family garbage at 2 a.m. That suspected him, though. I think it's going to be, it's cumulative. So the trash in and of itself isn't, the be all end all. But when I think, where a lot of people are, kind of feeling like it's cumulative, it's just starting to add up. The trash, the car being in the vicinity, the cell phone being switched off at that exact time, the photo of a victim on the phone. And again, if it was before, it's a problem. If it's after, maybe not so much. The DMing of somebody on Instagram shows a connection. The photos on the phone would show a connection. Kaylee's dad, Steve, is telling us that there's a connection between Kaylee and him. And again, that could have been on Instagram. We don't know exactly what that is. And then the ID that was reportedly found inside a glove, inside a box, could also be a trophy or connection. I think the case is going to be circumstantial. I think it's going to be cumulative, but we haven't heard either side of it. So I think being on the fence is an okay place to be. The separating the trash with gloves on and disposing of your trash in neighbors' trash cans, I do think is odd, especially if you have it, some people have said they don't think it's odd. I think the touch DNA can be explained away. I think each thing by itself can be explained away, right? But I think what's going to be, what the prosecution is going to try to do, and I'm not saying they're going to be successful or not successful, is they're going to be building this cumulatively. They're going to show piece after piece of the puzzle. And right now we have pieces of the puzzle, but we still are missing pieces of the puzzle, right? We don't know everything that the roommates have said. We have one comment, frozen shock phase, and that she thought she heard Kaylee playing with the dog. She heard Kaylee saying there's someone here. And then she heard somebody crying. And this came from Ethan and Santa's room. And it's okay. I'm here to help you. Right? Those are the only things we know. Those are the only things that we know that Dylan said. We don't know all the rest. So I think letting Dylan speak for herself is going to be really important. So, and letting Bethany hasn't had a chance to tell us anything yet. All we know about is that, she reportedly saw someone without their clothes on. And, I think the prosecution is going to build it piece by piece. And I think information is starting to add up for a lot of people. And for some people, they don't see it yet. And they may not see it. And the defense has not had a chance to put on their case either. So I think being on the fence is an okay place to be. And if you have an opinion, I respect that as well. All opinions are welcome. I just ask that you guys are respectful of each other in the comment section, and also in the comment section below, and also here on the top chat. And Leslie's right. We have to wait for the trial to have some of our questions answered. Yeah, I think giving the roommates a chance to speak for themselves and speak at the trial is a good thing. Shania, what a pretty name. I only trust what the court releases as evidence and information, not the media. this person streaming, well, I guess that this person streaming would be me, Shania, and I am a journalist. So if I were an attorney, I would probably be more focused. I am focused on what's in the affidavit and have gone through them in prior videos, but I'm also going to use journalistic resources because this is a journalistic channel. So if you're only interested in information that you agree with and you don't want to have all of the information, then there are channels that will, give you your confirmation bias. But if you want to hear all of the information and decide for yourself, this is a critical thinkers channel. And I think we're going to have to just wait. And it's okay if you think he's not guilty. And it's okay if you think he's guilty. It's okay if you're not sure yet. I just think that things need to be done in a respectful way. Greg puts up a 7. It was on Instagram. I was not able to message you. Yeah, I'm not on Instagram to follow anybody back right now because I'm live with you guys. So if you follow me, you're going to have to give me a chance to get on there and get back, and follow you back, which may not be till tomorrow, JJ. So just because when I get done here, I'm working on another video. I'm probably going to do some editing, and I probably won't log on to social media again until tomorrow. But touch DNA or not, 5.37 octillion to 1 is beyond any shred of doubt on it being his. Buying it off Amazon in March of 2022 fits like a puzzle piece. And I do think we have all these puzzle pieces. We just don't have them all together. Yeah, thanks, Amelia. Thank you to our mods, channel members, and subscribers. Amelia's one of our head mods, and please give me a thumbs up. It does help me out with the YouTube algorithm. You're welcome to share your comments. Just be respectful. Am I Reporter Room on Twitter? There is a Reporter Room account on Twitter, but I'm on there as Davies Writer, Jessica Della Davies. I think if you just type in my name, it should come up. Will Twitter allow pictures? I would think so. I've posted pictures on Twitter before, so it should. 2 officers that were in plain clothes on that evening. One of them was dressed all in black. 2 officers were talking to a young man who had a caution sign that he had stolen. Yeah, I saw that footage, and I would think that kind of stuff would have been ruled out right away. Again, law enforcement would have known who they had on their own body cams. So I think that they would have ruled people in or out that were in and around the area. I know there's been reports for screaming too, but remember, this was a college town, kind of a mountainous area. So just because somebody heard something doesn't mean it was related to the house or that it wasn't related to the house. We just don't know. I only think people who would have known Kaylee was going to be there unexpectedly would be Jack, Hunter, Maddie, unless you count Adam. I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't know who she told. We don't know yet, but I'm sure that will get brought out at trial. I'm sure the defense is going to bring it out. Courtney, not really. I would use the word medication. I'm not going to put it on the screen just as a precaution. I would use it on the word medication. Green-eyed, then those 2 officers conveniently turn off their body cams and microphones for 18 minutes. Didn't say anything. Then shortly after they turned them on. Again, my thought on that is that don't you think the officers would have gone through their own body cam footage as one of the first things that they did? So, I can see you, so I don't think you're banned, Regina. Teacher Ed says, matter of fact, if you go to Instagram, it shows her location on that photo to this day. Crazy, isn't it? Instagram shows too much, in my opinion. Thanks for that. Leslie is telling you she can see you. Yeah. We have had really nice people in the chat, and I really appreciate that. You guys have been really respectful to each other, and I just asked everybody to do the same thing in the comment section. It's okay to have differing opinions. This is a critical thinkers channel. And I learned from reading through your comments. JT 2023 had a different, he was telling me BK had friends because didn't think he had any friends. I was like, where were all these friends? And he was able to send me links. So, it is okay to have differing opinions. And if I find something, or if somebody else brings something to my attention, I will definitely look into it. And I shared with you that information. CJ Wagner says, do they know if a man or woman called in the DoorDash order, could they capture said the telephone number from which the call was made? My understanding, CJ, is that they know it was Anna that called DoorDash. She really did call DoorDash, and it really was a DoorDash driver that showed up with the food. And they know who the DoorDash driver is, and they've ruled the DoorDash driver out. That's all I know on that. I know the DoorDash driver was not BK. I know a lot of people have speculated that it could have been, but we know that it was not BK, that law enforcement knows who it is and ruled them out. But it's a great question. I'm sure that the defense and the prosecution are going to bring up this DoorDash driver. I'm sure that this DoorDash driver is going to be called to the stand by one, if not both sides. Jasper saying, we don't know if it's accurate unless it was in a police report about the trash. He could have been separating his recyclables or something. He was OCD. Could be. Do we know if the animal hair was tested against Murphy? We don't know. And there's something that if that animal hair and they found 2 human hairs too, if any of those hairs get traced back to the dog or the victim, that's a problem. And we don't know. If there is CCTV footage that proves that it was his vehicle in the area that night, along with the phone pings and the touch DNA, I think that's a big problem for the defense. But again, we haven't seen the case yet, so I'm urging caution. We don't know the whole story. Neither side is talking about it. Exactly. We have pieces of the puzzle. We don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. So we're just trying, here in the true crime community, we're just trying to fit pieces of the puzzle together, right? We're trying to take the puzzle pieces that we know and trying to make them fit. But we don't have all the pieces. Opinion Einstein, he had to use a neighbor's trash because they had an animal guard on their trash canister. Green Eye Bennett says they wanted BK to be right along with the police department. He was declined. I think, and we know BK, let me leave this up for a second. We know BK applied for a job with the Moscow PD. And this is, again, a speculation trigger warning. He did not get the job. Now, BK had an arrest. And although it was wiped clean on his record, I suspect law enforcement would have been able to see that. He was arrested when he was 19 because, he had medication issues. Watching my words here. And he stole his sister's cellular phone and sold it. He took it to the mall and sold it. And his dad called the police and he was arrested. So we know the Moscow PD would have seen this, and this would have been a deal breaker for them. So he would have been declined for a job. He would have been declined for anything to do with them, because most likely, even though a juvie record would not have applied here because he was 19, even though the record was expunged, I feel pretty confident that law enforcement would still be able to see that he had been arrested, and that this would be integrity issues. And the fact that he had medication issues would also be a problem. I don't think law enforcement is going to want to hire somebody with a history like that as a police officer. It doesn't mean they don't. It's just if they know about it ahead of time, they're probably going to try and pick somebody else, pick a candidate who, has a clean background. Because you don't want somebody that could be compromised integrity-wise on your police force. That doesn't mean somebody on the police force couldn't become compromised, but you wouldn't pick that out, somebody who already had issues, to start out that way. Does that make sense? Hey, Kami, great to see you. So Regina says, they have him with a cast. It's in the court docs. They do have it. Facts. And I would look for patterns and links if we're trying to make things connect. I agree. And I think we all have been doing patterns and links and fitting. We all are looking at this, the puzzle pieces, right? All of us together, trying to make this puzzle fit. And some of us are putting the puzzle together one way, and some of us are putting together the puzzle in a different way. We're coming up with different conclusions because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle yet. So that's why I think it's okay if you're still on the fence and you haven't decided. If you do feel like you know how the puzzle pieces have fit, that's okay too. Shane says the pieces have to be exclusive to Kohberger. The minute you can place one of those pieces somewhere else, the case falls apart. They have to prove. Yes, and the defense only needs to get one juror, right? Has to be beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond any doubt at all, but beyond a reasonable doubt. And he deserves his day in court. Was the motive to scare other people into paying their debts? I'm watching my words. Not missing payments. I haven't heard anything about this. I would think that would be something that law enforcement would have looked into also, especially given the history of one of family members. But I also think we need to be careful not to blame family members doing stuff on roommates that don't have any history of doing anything like that. So I think before we say that roommates are the victims, before we blame them, they're not guilty for the sins of their parents. Does that make sense? So I would urge caution on that before we jump to any conclusions. We can't imagine all the evidence. The prosecution hasn't shown anything. But we know that there's like 50 plus gigabytes of gigabytes of information. There's so much information that the defense says they couldn't provide an alibi. And I felt frustrated with this. I'm going to be honest. I felt frustrated with the defense saying that they couldn't provide an alibi. That they're saying there's so much evidence to go through, they can't provide an alibi. But then they're saying the prosecution isn't turning over evidence. Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Regina, for this super sticker. I'm trying to grab it if I can. I don't know if it just hasn't come up yet. I can't even get it on the screen, but thank you. If I can get it, I will get it. I don't know if I missed it, but this is Regina Wright. I don't see this super sticker, but I did see it. I could see you gave me one for $1.99. Thank you so much. I will put that toward the channel. Any super chats or super stickers I put toward the channel, toward video, audio, and editing equipment. So thank you for that. So Regina says Bill Thompson is not going to ask for the capital punishment unless he himself has seen enough evidence to be convinced of guilt. Look at the Bill's 20 years of history. It isn't how he operates. That's a very good point. Would they be going for something that's, I think, going to make it harder for the jury to decide, right? It's going to be harder for the jury to decide on capital punishment unless he thought he had all the goods. Unless the family members really wanted it and he felt pressure from the family members. I don't know. Just saying is saying. I wonder if they have Dylan listen to recorded samples of BK's voice to see if she can identify it. We don't know. That's a great question. If could she identify his voice? I don't know. If you just heard somebody say one sentence, I'm just here to help you. Could you identify their voice? I don't know. Lots of deers and raccoon as other animals is why the closed trash can area he was dumping it. BK's trash did not have a surrounding enclosure. JJ, I see your comment. I don't know what it's in reference to. Ingratiate. Regina says, also 20 years, Bill Thompson. This is the prosecutor. Bill Thompson's the prosecutor, has never sought a capital case and lost the case. Every capital case he's tried has led to convictions. That's very interesting. I have not done any research on that, but I will look into that. Very, very interesting. Teacher says, so many people chatting. Green, I missed your complete thought. Yeah, some of the comments are whizzing by and I'm not seeing all of them. I'm trying to get to them. Jody says, we absolutely don't know many things. The roommate's description is pretty suspicious. Yeah, there's so many things. We're all looking at pieces of the puzzle. We're all putting the pieces of the puzzle together a little bit differently. And I think that's okay. Truth Exposed says, I think he's guilty. Plus, I think he dumped the knife in the Snake River. He admired Ted Bundy so much, and that's where Ted admitted he dumped the Idaho hitchhiker. They never found her. Oh, wow. Well, that is very, very interesting. I see your super sticker. I found it. I'm just behind on the chat. Okay. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Regina. I really appreciate it. And I'll be putting that toward a camera. Well, I think on that note, we're going to leave it there. If you have any other comments you want to share, just share them. Watch what words you use, because if you say certain words, it'll get filtered out by YouTube. So if, think about it, use word medication instead of some other words you might use. Did away with is better than the K word, just so that I can see your comments. If they get caught in the filter, sometimes I do see them and I'll fish them out. And sometimes I don't. If you're trying to share links on YouTube, a lot of times it'll get put into the filter as spam because YouTube doesn't know what you're sharing. You could be sharing as a link to something that's not safe for people to click on. So a lot of times they'll put that in the spam filter. So you're better off sharing that on Twitter. If it's a link and I can't recognize where the link goes, I'm probably not going to click on it either because I don't want my computer to be compromised. Hasbro, yeah, and we talked about this trauma bonding in the members only about like why do these people fall in love with these SKs? But and Ted Bundy had friends and got married after he proposed to her while he was on trial. If you go back and look at the thing, and got married and had a daughter with her after. Were his friends his new location? I don't think were his friends in his new location. I'm not sure who the his is. If it's talking about BK, I'm not sure. Deep Water says, has anyone heard of the steam tunnels that ran under the college in town? I have. I did see that video. I thought it was interesting, but there's nothing that's linking anything to steam tunnels. And I would think that law enforcement again would know about the steam tunnels. But I did think that was interesting. I thought it was definitely interesting. And I'm sure that, it would be something that would be looked into by law enforcement. They would know a lot of that too. And I'm sure it'll get brought up at the trial if there's anything to it by either the defense or the prosecution. So on that note, I just want to say thank you so much to our executive producers. Please subscribe if you haven't already. To our producers, thank you so much for your support. Our awesome channel members, if you would like to become a channel member, just hit the join button and your name will appear in every video that I make. And I am also asking if you would be so kind as to see you next time. Bye.